Tell me when we're ready, Jim, please. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is November 2nd, 2022. It is 2:40 in the afternoon, and this is our monthly Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. We have two board members present, Ms. Mineo and Ms. Green. In addition, Andrea Moriarty, myself, Kate Farrell, Al Romano, who is our Director of Science, who will be presenting, Linda Keach, our Arts Director, and two staff members, Chris Kutsonis, I apologize if I have mispronounced your name, and Sherry Franco. Thank you for being here this afternoon, and we will proceed with our agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. Elementary curriculum instruction has the first resolution, which is a resolution to approve a contract with Land to Learn. Land to Learn works with some of the elementary schools, Temple Hill Academy, Vales Gate, Horizons, and Gidney Avenue. They do gardening, food projects, community projects, and focus on health and ecology. Are there any questions?
I read this stuff on Board Docs, and it sounds like such fun. And what are they gonna do in the winter when they can't work really in the garden?
The teachers from Land to Learn come in and do little projects inside, talking about how to prepare the soil, how to prepare the land, what they're going to plant. They plan it all out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It sounds like real fun.
They love it. They
Yeah.
love it.
The next is Resolution 1.02. That's conference requests in the secondary curriculum area. Would you like me to go through each one, or
No,
are there any particular questions, Ms. Green?
no, you don't have to go through each one.
Ms. Mineo, do you have any questions on any of these?
This just looks like you added a little money to.
Some of them, yes.
Because of probably transportation costs.
It actually was lodging additional costs, but yes, that's exactly what
It
happened.
was for 3 of them because we discussed it previously.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is 1.03.
And that transitions
And that-
back to me. So at the last board meeting, the board voted on UPK contracts for some of our CBOs. On 2 of them, item 1.03 and item 1.04, there have been adjustments in the payout of when they'll get paid. So we need to bring the contract back to the board for approval. Are there any questions about either of those?
No,
Great.
No.
So we'll move right down to 1.05.
And that
You went
brings it
home
back to
You
me.
went home sick.
No, you're not in executive session.
Oh. Yes.
And that brings us back to 1.05. That is field trips, secondary. The first is a field trip for our ROTC students. Are there any questions or concerns?
No, thank you.
Thank you. The second is a resolution to approve new courses on the secondary level. We have a orchestra and wind ensemble class that meets in the high school now for a full year every day. That carries a weight of 1.0 credit. By offering the exact same course on an alternate day schedule, more students can participate in our music instruction program, and they will earn half a credit because the course meets for half the time that it normally would have met. So this is to establish the 0.5 credit section for orchestra and the 0.5 credit section for wind ensemble. The students will take the class for the full year, but on alternate days, so they will only earn half a credit rather than those students who can take it every day and earn the full credit. Questions?
Okay, I read through this, and thank you, Ms. Keach, for being here, because I kind of understand this, but it's still a little confusing. So do these courses have the same course number?
No, they will have different course
Okay.
numbers, and that's why we have to memorialize this, because otherwise we would not know which students earned 0.0 credit, 0.5.
I also thought that if they take it and it wasn't the same course number, they couldn't get credit for it, period, because
Exactly,
the computer wouldn't see the difference in the
yes,
students to get their credits on their transcript.
yes.
So approximately how many more students will be able to participate if we allow this? this half?
I don't know the answer to that. May I defer to Ms. Kate?
Please, yeah.
At this time, we have, I believe, 4 students, but we haven't put it out there yet because we didn't want to ask until we got approval for it.
Well, this is for in addition to the ones that are already participating, because it's gonna
Correct.
be like a 1.0 course, and then on top of that.
Mhm.
And it's gonna be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or something like that, or?
Well, the schedule at the high school's AB, so
Okay.
they either have it on A days or B days. You know, there would be a class that meets every day, and then some of the students would come just on A days, and some would come on B days, but
But it's allowing students the ability to participate. That's really good.
yeah,
And it'll also go probably against gym or against labs or whatever.
Right.
To help out.
more options.
Thank you.
Any other questions for 1.06?
No, thank you.
And that leads us to, I shouldn't say the meat of our meeting, because clearly the important pieces are those that you are voting on in addition to this piece. We have Al Romano here. Mr. Romano is our Director of Science. And he is our first director to present your curriculum and instruction this year. He's going to discuss briefly an outline of the curriculum in our district, K through pre-K through 6, and then
12.
7 through 12.
Yeah.
And some of the changes that have come down the road from SED, et cetera. Without further ado, Mr. Romano.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I'd like to give an overview of curriculum and assessment in the science department, pre-K-12. And I'm going to present the timeline of what we call the New York State Science Learning Standards, which are based on the next generation science standards. New York State adopted the next gen science standards and added roughly about 15% of their own standards as well. So as I start this, I want to go over the New York State Science Learning Standards, or NSLS as it's called for short, timeline. And this timeline has changed twice since the inception in 2016 due to COVID. So everything got moved back 2 years. But the important takeaways at this point in time is that last school year, June 2022, saw the last administration of the grade 4, 1996 standard-based New York State assessment for science. This school year, in June of 2023, there will be no elementary science assessment as the state moves to the new elementary assessment, which is going to be an assessment in grade 5, which assesses the grade band of 3-5, grade 3 to grade 5. And that will have its first administration in the spring of 2024. And the reason they skipped a year is because they're moving it to grade 5. If we assess this year, the students that are we were in grade 4 last year, will be double assessed, grade 4 and grade 5. So there's a year transition. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, next school year, in June of 2024, will be the new grade 8 New York State Science Assessment based on the NSLS standards. This June 2023 will be the last assessment based on the 1996 standards in grade 8. And two things to note: for the last 15, 20 years, both of those assessments had a performance component. There was a performance component and a written component. Moving forward with the new assessments, there will no longer be performance components. It'll be replaced by 4 mandated state labs, which I'll go over in a moment. Also, moving forward, we see that in June of 2025 will be the first administration of NSLS, or Next Generation Science Standard, based biology and earth and space science regents exams, which is earth science. And in June of 2026 will be the first administration of chemistry and physics regents exams based on the new NSLS standards. So that timeline has moved twice for us since our inception. And know that in the school year of 2016, 2017, the district and the science department did align all of our curriculum maps and all of our curriculum to new standards. But keep in mind, at the high school level, because of this pushback of 2 years, that the teachers have to be cognizant, and they're teaching that the regents exams for the next 2 years are still based on the 1996 standards. That was due to COVID. That was something that came out of COVID. So that's kind of the backdrop. And I think everybody should be aware of that timeline as it gets implemented. Okay, so, this is kind of an outline of the skills and the content, for the grades 5, the grade 8, and the Regents exam, as I was stating. So grade 5, which will take place next school year in June of 2024, has 4 required New York State lab investigations. The written assessment, will have 15% of those written questions based on these 4 labs. We'll be doing professional development over this school year with the teaching staff, and getting them ready for these assessing these labs, which will be implemented next year. They have to have, those students have to have proficiency on this New York State grade 5 science assessment as a measure of science standards in grades 3, 4, and 5, because that's that band. We have 4 bands now in science. We have K2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. Okay, I have 2 grade 8s on here. The current grade 8, which is proficiency, the grade 8 science assessment as a measure of the 1996 standards. All right, 6, 8. And the last administration is this school year in June of 2023. And as I just stated before, the new grade 4 will coincide with the new grade 5 next school year in June 2024. That grade band of 6, 8 will also have 4 required New York State lab investigations, which are about 15% of the written assessment. And the students have to show proficiency, as a measure of the New York State Science Standards 6-8. And we are doing professional development on these new labs, actually November 8th on our superintendent's conference day as an initiation of this. And we'll be working throughout the year on that professional development. Regents, and we have Regents in living environment honors, earth science honors, chemistry honors, and Regents physics. All of those courses, as they have been since probably 30 years now, require that a student must meet 1,200 minutes of satisfactory labs. The only change that has been in this, up until COVID, all those labs had to be hands-on. During COVID, the state allowed for a virtual component, as well as a hands-on if you could do it during that time. And we had a feeling this was going to happen, but a memo came out at the beginning of the school year. The state is indefinitely, as the word they use, are going to allow hands-on and or virtual labs moving forward. So for all Regent science courses, living environment, like the grade 5 and the grade 8, does have 4 required New York State lab investigations. That's been since about 2010. Earth science has the lab practicum in addition to the written assessment, and the student must take that lab practicum each time they take the written assessment, even if they've taken it multiple times. So they must show proficiency on the New York State 1996 standards, which are course specific for the Regents assessments until those change in 2025 and 2026.
I have a question.
Yes,
In grade 5, for those 4 required labs, do they take all of those labs in grade 5, or do they take those labs over a period of time?
yes, great question. So each lab has a standard that it is based on. And the way they're written right now, in the 3-5 band, 2 of the labs are grade 3, one's grade 4, and one's grade 5. But the state says you have the fact that each individual district has the flexibility to do those labs as they see fit over that grade band.
Mhm.
You could put them all on the 5th grade teacher, or you could spread them out from grade 3 to 4 to 5. So we have that flexibility, and hopefully we'll spread those out and then do a review. Yes,
My question kind of dovetails on Ms. Green's question.
yes.
So in the beginning, it was how do we keep students in grades K-5 engaged in science education? How do we make sure that they really are loving science and moving forward in science? Because without those critical first years,
Yeah.
when they get to the high school, we're going to see gaps.
Absolutely.
So I understand what you're saying about leaving the labs, maybe some in 3rd, some in 4th, some in 5th. But how else can we assure that teachers are comfortable enough and have the resources and time enough to really engage students in science education?
Right, that's a great question, and it's got multiple facets to it. The first thing that you asked me, and I've been in science my whole life, either working in science, studying science, and teaching and director. To get somebody engaged in science, you have to have hands-on experiential learning. If you're just doing it from a book, from a video, it doesn't really engage. So it has to be authentic, hands-on. We have to make sure that we have time scheduled in the day for that. That takes time. Right? I remember a time when we had more science specialists. I was always one. We had 5 when I first became a director. We have 3 now. I wish we had 9.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah, and I-
only have 3.
I lobbied for that in 2004 when I became a director. I really believe we should have a science lab in every elementary building.
So maybe that's something that we need to look at for our next budget round, which
Right.
comes up. Beginning discussions are gonna
Right.
be soon, very, very
Right,
soon.
when you have that specialist that is really engaging in science, and then the teachers bring their students there, and the teachers stay there too, and it's almost embedded professional development for them as well. So, and then they bring back to their classroom the follow-up to that activity, and science happens more authentically.
It also provides a comfort level
Right,
on it with an elementary teacher on teaching science, which
Absolutely.
is very, sometimes it's out of everybody's ken of
absolutely.
what they do.
And you had one of the best science specialists in the district.
I most certainly did.
So,
Ms. Green has another
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
no,
yes.
And in response to, Ms. Maneo,
Yeah.
to have a lab in every elementary school, that requires space too, because it has to be set up. So although you can try to fit it in the budget, they also have to have the space for it, because lab rooms take up space.
Yes.
I mean, adequate lab rooms. Now, if it's inadequate, then it doesn't matter, but adequate lab rooms, they need space to have all those materials and stuff. So it's also not just a budget issue, it's also a space issue.
Right.
Point.
Okay, great. Those are all great points. Love to see it too. So assessments, well, these are our local assessments. We just went over state assessments. So currently in grades 6 through 8, we have 4 common quarterly assessments that are aligned to the skills and the content of the respective quarter. They count as 2.5% of each quarter, or 10% of the final grade. Our assessments were written by teachers, and they're housed in the NECSD Science Drive for teachers to access. Also beyond that, in every teacher's classroom, there are teacher-derived assessments and laboratory investigations. Regions, 4 common quarterly assessments, again, aligned to the skills and content of each respective quarter. They count as a test grade within that quarter. Again, these assessments were written by teachers, and they're housed in the Science Drive for teachers to access. And again, they're beyond that. There are many activities and laboratory investigations and assessments that are teacher-derived in those classrooms. For 9-12, non-regions are what we call elective courses. Again, teacher-derived assessment and laboratory investigations. But what's different here is we have common culminating activities in quarter 4 that assess the skills and content of the course. They're project-based, and they count as 10% of the final average, and those are as well housed in the NECSD Science Drive for teachers to access. Teachers wrote those. So we had a collaborative sessions over the last couple of years, and this is the 3rd year we're doing them, and we really kind of honed those in. The only exception to that is if there's an AP or college level course where that college requires a final exam, there will not be a culminating activity in that course, but it will have the college final, and that will be 10% of the final average. So that's the only exception. Yes, Ms.
With the changes, do we have to change the names of any of our courses?
Well, we did that, if you remember, in curriculum committee just recently with, I aligned 3 of our courses to Syracuse University Project Advance.
Mhm.
And so with those, we changed the names. Instead of AP Physics 1, AP Chemistry, AP Biology, it became College Biology, College Physics, and College Chemistry.
I'm talking
Oh.
about the one that said something about space, because they added
Or
Earth
science.
science.
Oh, Earth and Space Science. So what it is, the new standards, the new next gen standards are either LS, Life Science, PS for Physical Science, or ESS, Earth and Space Science. So instead of calling it the Earth Science Regents, now they're calling it the Earth and Space Science, because that aligns with the nomenclature on the standards.
So what do we call our course?
We still call it Earth Science.
And that's okay.
That's okay. And if I'll keep my eye on that. If they want us to change the Earth and
Okay.
Space Science region, I haven't heard that yet, but I'll keep my eye on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions on local assessment? Okay, resources. So, of course, we have board approved and adopted Harcourt textbook series, and that was the first series I adopted when I became the director in 2004 for K-5, and we still have those in play. During COVID, we really had to, as we all know, we had to bring in some virtual resources. I brought in Generation Genius. I worked with elementary teachers, and this was a program that we liked, and it had video lessons, vocabulary, lesson plans, teacher guides, discussion questions. There's quizzes, there's assessments in here. So that is still in play for all K-5 teachers. With all of our, again, I have here NECSD, New York State Science Learning Standards, aligned curriculum maps. They're housed in the K-12 curriculum map drive, and I also have them in my science drive for teachers to access. We do, as we just discussed a little earlier, we have 3 science specialists in the districts at Bales Gate, Gardnertown, and Fostertown. Okay, and I loved that conversation we had earlier about getting one in every building would be a miracle, be a dream. I'd love to see that. 612, again, we have Board of Ed approved and adopted textbooks, which we've done over time. The virtual platform that I worked with the teachers and we brought in during COVID and we are still using is Explore Learning is the parent company, Gizmos. They are virtual science labs. And those really helped us get through the COVID period. But now the state, as I said earlier, I said that the virtual lab is going to be in play indefinitely. It can be hands-on or virtual. This is still a great resource. It's a great resource for a student that may be out, has an extension to a lab that a teacher can send home in addition to the hands-on experience. And so I've got a lot of really good feedback around that. So we've kept that in play. Of course, we have our NISLIS aligned curriculum maps, which are housed again in K-12 curriculum map drive and in my science drive for teachers to access.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Question.
Yes, I'm sorry.
One quick question.
Go back.
For students that have to make up labs
Yes.
sometimes because that happens,
Absolutely.
can they use the virtual as makeup as well? Because that needs to be stated, because they may think that makeup labs may only have to be hands-on, so they can still use the virtual for makeup labs.
That is correct. And with that
Right.
memo that came out in August from NYSED, we can use virtual labs as a lab that counts for Regents credit as a makeup.
Okay,
Yes,
because that needs to be stated.
yes.
And I really like the ability to use both.
Right,
It gives not only
Right.
teachers, but the kids a little bit of flexibility.
Absolutely.
And maybe
Right.
instead of having kids in need of lab in June,
Right.
that maybe kids can
Right.
do other labs during
Right.
the year, on
Right.
virtual platform.
that's why I asked about the makeups.
Right, and another resource to help with that, which I did not put on here, is we are just now starting our Empire program, where we're gonna be doing Rock the Regents review for January, and then in February, March, we'll start Rock the Regents for the June Regents, but that's when we start our lab makeup as well,
Okay,
after school, and we did a Saturday lab as well. So that's what we always have that too, that'll be in play in the spring.
Because we have a number of students that are bored because they don't have enough minutes.
Correct,
So this would really help
this helps.
everybody.
This can help virtually at home, and it can help with the after-school hands-on lab. So we have some partners and some facilities that I was asked to go through some of the resources. These are three big resources. So Black Rock Forest, we've been a consortium member since 1994. Okay, and so our teachers can use the consortium to take students on field trips, and those field trips are aligned to the curriculum, which are aligned to our New York State Science Learning Standards. Also, we've run a summer STEM program. I think 2009-10, summer 2010 was the first summer that we ran it. So we've run it now for 9 years. And that is a program that goes out to grades 3 through 9. So Black Rock Forest there's live data that comes from Black Rock Forest, and teachers want to tap into it. Field trips, there's one teacher in the room right now who goes to many, many trips to Black Rock Forest. There's a lot of great field experiences, yes, that we use. Beacon Institute is more of a recent partner of ours, about the last 4 years. And we do have field trips to Dennings Point, right? We can see it from the window right here, right across the river. Also, in the last 4 years, I've developed a summer STEM program with them as well. We call it Team Survival. And grades 6-8 can take advantage of that. And we've run that every summer now for 4 summers. I want to put a plug for our planetarium, which was put in 1965, and we ran it from 1965 to 2012. And we facilitated K-12 programs there. And we did a couple evening shows a year for the community. I've recently started to really get it back up to speed. Right now, John Newhall, who teaches astronomy and meteorology and earth science, he really has taken under his wing to, as some previous earth science teachers, Tim Denman and Alex Passes, to mention them. He uses that in his teaching, and so does Fran D'Angelo. So they're using it during the day. But we were just asked, could we put a program in after school on Empire? So we thought about it and we came up with a name. We were brainstorming, Reach for the Stars. So that's going to occur very soon in November. So maybe highlight the planetarium a little bit more. And we're going to, so we've already got 20 plus kids signed up for that program. So that's going to happen. And then we can talk about its, resurrection for us K-12 moving forward. Any questions about those?
I have
Yes.
a couple of questions. One, when I was in Gidney Avenue School as principal, the kids loved going to the planetarium.
Yeah.
I think the teachers liked it too, when it was
Yes.
dark and cozy. It was really nice. So that's one thing. The last thing that I want to ask is,
Yes.
do we have enough hands-on materials at the elementary level? And how can the board support that,
Okay.
to support science education?
So the way I see it right now is, in the 3 schools that we have as science specialists, yes. And we do have it in other schools. Perhaps at this point in time, there isn't the point people that I've had in the past that would call those items. They're there, but there needs to be somebody there, like a science specialist, to put it all together, make sure everybody has what they need. I do have point people that help to buy the resources for the school every year. I give them their budget and I work with them to order those. We do have plenty of supplies. So to answer your question, at first level, yeah, we have the supplies. I think, as we talked about earlier, having somebody there to bring that together to help would be a good thing.
Would a possibility be, how we have lead teachers at
Yes.
secondary level?
Yes.
If instead of having a science specialist at this point in time, because of space challenges or whatever challenges there might be, maybe if we had a position to have a lead science teacher at each building,
Right.
to help you and communicate with you,
Right.
and to be the rah for science in the elementary.
Yeah, that would be great. And the I call them my liaisons, the other, other than the other 3. And many of them would be very excited to have that role because they help me with certain things, but to actually put them in that role formally, I think they would be excited to do that. Yes.
Once again, the question I would have is, like, at the elementary school level, since they don't have it by subject area, because elementary teachers teach everything, you would have to find a teacher that's very comfortable with science, and it would have to be a thing through the union, I'm assuming, as well, will probably get involved in that. But they would just be mostly focusing on science, and that's going to be kind of hard to do since elementary teachers teach everything.
Oh,
So we would have to really look into that, and I'm certain the union will probably get involved in it.
Yes, but in the past, it was a teacher, a regular classroom teacher,
Mhm.
a certified N6 person, or
Mhm.
now it's 1/6 person, who had a love of this particular
Right.
instructional area. And they kind of were the liaison.
Okay,
Right. Yes.
if it can happen, I approve it, but I'm just saying sometimes it gets a little iffy, sticky, because they would be focusing on mostly the science component, and I don't know how that would go here.
Well, what they do with the science specialists in the 3 schools and in the past 5 schools is that students, they go through that science lab on a cycle in the schedule. And trust me, we do have people in those schools who would love to be in that role, who are
Okay.
excited.
That's great.
So we just need to produce the role, and I think build it and they will come.
Okay,
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Romano. Okay.
Sure. So last thing is community awareness. So how do we, what do we have that the community can grab onto or see where these things are? So there are district syllabi by course and grade levels, which are provided to students, they go home to parents. Okay. In the science department, here's something that we do, and I didn't start this. There's Dr. Annette Satinelli back in the mid to late 80s, and John Caparella after her, and Russ Agostero, and then to me, follow suit with this. And the science teacher in the room, we have in September, there's a 1,200-minute lab requirement letter that goes home to parents. All right, that has to be signed by a parent and the student. So everybody is aware of that 1,200-minute lab requirement. We do on 5-week notices and report cards have a bubble in Infinite Campus. And we started it when we had 10X where it says, it gives awareness to the parent that, labs are incomplete. So that goes home 5-week notice. We also have a mid-year letter that goes out in January that says, okay, your child is at this point with that 1,200 lab requirement. We have a May letter, which is, I call it the early distant warning. And then we have the BARD letter, unfortunately, if we have to send it out in June. So there is a lot of awareness around that 1,200 lab requirement, which we've been doing for many years, long before my tenure. I'm continuing it. We also send home, because the parent has to sign this, a safety and goggles letter. Because the parents and the student have to understand safety in the laboratory. And there is a thing with New York State with safety with goggles. If you're wearing contact lenses, the parent and the student has to elect whether they are going to wear goggles over their glasses, their contact lenses, or take them out. And the reason is, especially in a chemistry class, there could be gases that are emitted that could fuse a lens to an eye. So we have, in that letter, it states that, and the parent and the student have to sign off on that. So that's something we've been doing that since the mid to late 1980s. Okay, so that goes home in September as well. I have a forward-facing website, which is on our district website. So I can click on this. This should work. All right. Let me navigate. This is our website. If you go to departments and scroll down, scroll down to science department, you'll come to this page. And this is forward-facing. This is for students and parents. So it has my name here and how I can be contacted. And some things I put, and I'm always kind of building this. I started redoing it again last year, so I'll add more to this. I do have some live links that are resources for Earth Science Living Environment, because those two are our Regents gatekeepers for graduation at the commencement level. I have some other online resources that can be used by any grade level. I also like to put on here what the New York State assessments are, grade. Well, this year there's no grade 4, so it's not there. I put here in red. Okay, will not be in the grade 4 will not be administered for the 22-23 school year. So that's right up top. All right, and then I talk about the grade 8 written test. Here's a Regents exam schedule for January, June, and August. And the framework and the standards for science pre-K-12 are also hyperlinked here. And I keep building this and I keep changing it. But this is another way the community can have awareness. So I have this forward-facing website.
I applaud you. That's good. I'm serious. I like that.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, there's a few things here, like, I remember I had to do it in paper in the past, but if a student wants to prepare themselves for the Earth Science Living Environment Regents, there's always those documents out there, 100 ways to pass the Earth Science Regents, or the
Right.
Living Environment. So there's those, they can hyperlink themselves to those, and teachers have these things in their classroom as well. Let me get back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so again, I just wrote here assessment schedule and framework. So that's kind of an overview of the science department, pre-K-12, and the Newburgh City School District.
Do either of our board members have any additional questions or requests for additional information?
No,
No.
thank you. That was really good.
It
Thank
really
you.
was. I like the fact that you put all that work into putting it on a website for kids or parents who can just click and look and
Right.
see. That was really good.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Sure, yeah, that's what I call my forward-facing. The backward-facing one is for the teachers, which is that drive that have the houses materials that they need. So,
Very good.
thank you.
Okay, well, unless there are other concerns that our board members have, that would conclude our meeting. Thank you.
Next
very
month's
much.
meeting will
Next
be
month.
at 5:00 here in the boardroom.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Nice job, Al. Thank you.
No, that was a really
You
good
rock, Al.
presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Thank you.